Hey there, BookTube! It's Bobby, aka Paginator, and I am here today to talk about my favorite books of 2017. Now, these books may have been published in 2017 or before. I just happened to read them in 2017. During this past year, I read 180 books, which completely shocked me because my original goal on my Goodreads reading challenge was 25? 125. So I overshot a little bit, and I'm super stoked. And yeah, 180 books, that's kind of ridiculous. But, that's just what happens. Okay, so I decided to try to pick 17 books for 2017, and thank you, Emma, for that idea of doing 17. I had a hard time. You can imagine out of 180 books, narrowing it down to 17 was a little bit tricky. So I came up with 17 plus 3 honorable mentions. It's kind of cheating, but oh well. Now, I can tell you that some of these books I have to hold up and show you, most of them I do not, because I am a school teacher and a lot of these books are in my classroom library, so they're just not here for me to hold up, and I didn't want to go take a suitcase to the school and gather them all up. Plus, my students have some of them checked out. So some books I'll hold up, some books I won't. I'll try to put a list of all the books in the space below there if you can't remember a certain title that I mentioned or whatever the case may be. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about each book just because who wants to spend an entire video talking about each and every book for on and on and on. Anyway, here we go. So I'm going to start with my honorable mentions, and they are Carve the Mark by Veronica Roth, which I totally loved. I read it in like a day and a half. And then these two lovely books, Reign of Shadows and Rise of Fire by Sophie Jordan. I actually got to hear her speak at an event, and she was there with Victoria Aveyard, and I got to hear the two of them speak together, and that was super fun. Alright, so moving to the official list, these are my top 17 books. They're not in any particular order. I will tell you when we get to my number one book, but that's the only one that I even tried to pick out because it's so much in my heart that I just couldn't not choose it for number one, but the rest are like all tied for number two because I can't make decisions. Alright, so the first book is American on Purpose by Craig Ferguson, and I have this book somewhere, but in my house there's lots of places where books are hiding in nooks and crannies, and I just couldn't find this one for the video. Plus I listen to it on audio most of the time, so that's when I read it recently was through audio. And this is Craig Ferguson's autobiography, a memoir, if you will, of his years growing up in Scotland and how he became a stand-up comedian and then the host of The Late Late Show before James Corden took over before him. If you don't know who Craig Ferguson is, you should definitely look him up. He hosts a game show now, and he also does a show for the History Channel. He has lots of stand-up specials. He was on The Drew Carey Show. He was Mr. Wick. And like I said, he was on The Late Late Show. He's hilarious. So there you go. The second book is A Little in Love by Susan Fletcher. If you're familiar with the story of Les Miserables, either the play, the musical, or the book, you know the character Eponine, and she is the girl who's totally in love with Marius, and this story, A Little in Love by Susan Fletcher, is Eponine's story. It tells things from her point of view, and we get to know more about her life growing up as a Thénardier and what a horrible family she had to put up with as a child. The next book on my list is The Western Star by Craig Johnson. I do have this one here, and it is autographed. If I can find my correct page, I'll show you the autograph. Craig Johnson is wonderful. He is a fantastic speaker. He's a wonderful storyteller, and if you ever get a chance, go hear him speak. He writes the Longmire Mysteries, which have been turned into a TV show on Netflix, and it is now over, and I'm so sad. I cried when I watched the last episode, but luckily the books are still coming, and they might be doing some TV movies, from what I've heard. The Western Star is going back in time when we see Walt when he was just a young deputy, under Lucian Connolly, and he and all of the sheriffs in Wyoming are on this train for a weekend kind of law enforcement conference, and of course a murder happens on the train. Alright, the next book on my list is Moxie by Jennifer Mathieu, or Jennifer Mathieu. I'm not sure exactly how you say her last name, but this is a fantastic book. It's Supergirl power. I wish that I could turn this over to my 7th grade girls and say, read this book, but because of some things that the high school boys have on their t-shirts mostly, and because of the way that the high school boys in this book treat the girls, I don't feel like my little 7th grade girls are quite ready for this. Maybe I'll pass it to my high school girls or something and they can do a Moxie revolution. Not that they really need to. Our high school boys are pretty good. But anyway, if you haven't read this book, definitely check it out. It is Supergirl power and about girls who are kind of taking back their school and saying, you know what, boys, you can't treat us like crap anymore. And get away with it. We're not going to put up with it. The next book on my list is City of Heavenly Fire by Cassandra Clare. Now, I have to tell you, this is not a reread. I just read it for the first time this summer. I know. Don't yell at me. I know, I don't know what crap I've been thinking. I guess I just got intimidated because it's so big, and I read the others in the series and just kept looking at that sitting on my TBR pile and going, not yet. I'll pick a smaller book, I suppose. But I finally got to it and loved it, and I was actually staying with family when I was finishing this book and stayed up way late, and I was really tired the next morning and grouchy, and my poor family had to put up with me being grouchy because I stayed up too late reading City of Heavenly Fire. Alright, the next book on my list is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. This is a hilarious book. It is on my top list because of how funny it is. It is about this beautiful young man and his best friend are going on their grand tour all around Europe, and he happens to be in love with his best friend, but his best friend doesn't know it, and his sister's going with them as well, and they just get up to hijinks and shenanigans and like streaking in the Palace of Versailles, and there's all kinds of craziness in this book, and it's just really funny historical fiction, which I haven't read since My Lady Jane. So there we go. Anytime I can get some funny historical fiction, I'm going to absolutely love it. All right. Let's see. Gentleman's Guide. Okay. Next book. Now, I wish I had this one to hold in my hands because this is my #1 favorite book that I read in 2017. Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. I read this book in a day. I was a horrible teacher that day. I was like, okay, you guys do your assignments and definitely ask me for help if you need it, but I'm going to be over here reading this book. And I would check on them, of course. I wasn't that bad of a teacher, but still I was like, okay, I need to read. I need to read some more. This book sucked me in. It was so amazing. If you don't know, Eliza and Her Monsters is about a girl named Eliza Merck who is the creator of a super famous webcomic. It's famous around the country, and people love it and are crazy for it and make fan art of it and get tattoos of it, and it's just nuts. But nobody knows that it's Eliza that makes this except for her family members and 2 online friends that help her run the content. And what happens when her secret comes out? Plus, she's got some anxiety issues, which I can personally relate to, and she's also got this boy that is a fan of her webcomic, and she kind of wants him to know, but kind of doesn't, and she's really scared of what might happen if the secret comes out, but of course it does because there would be no conflict otherwise, and it's a fantastic book. Just go read it. Go read it right now. All right. Next on my list is a reread. I've reread this book now twice, so a total of 3 times through this book, and I'll probably reread it more. A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This is my favorite in this trilogy. I started off reading A Court of Thorns and Roses, of course, that's the first one, and thought, oh, this is great. And then when I realized what a jerk Tamlin is, I'm like, oh boy. But then in this book, we start to get some other things happening, and I don't want to say more than that, because if you haven't read this series, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but just, let me just say, Reese, he's my favorite fictional boy. I don't know what else to say, and this is the best one in the series. Now, I know that a couple of people that are subscribed to this channel are under the age of 18, and I would say hold off on this series for a little bit. Just wait till you're a little older before you read this one, though. Okay? Trust me. Alright, that's next on my list. Longbourn. Okay, Longbourn is a book written by Jo Baker. And this was in my summer TBR video, if you watched that one. This is about the story of Pride and Prejudice is told from the servants who work at Longbourn, and you get a totally different picture of the Bennet family and the people that live in and around Longbourn, as well as some of the other families from Pride and Prejudice. I can never look at Mr. Bennet the same way. I will still love him dearly because he's Mr. Bennet, but there's just something that you learn about him in this book, which, again, is not by Jane Austen, so we don't know what's going on in Jane Austen's heart, how she feels about this book. I'd like to think she's up in heaven reading all of the spin-offs of her stories and going, I approve of that one. No, I don't approve of that one. But anyway, I think she would approve of this story just because it's so well done, and yeah, it's, I don't want to say any more because I'm going to spoil something, so just read Longbourn. Alright. Sorry, I had to fix my stack of books that was falling over. Okay, so up next we have another reread, and this probably is going to be on my list every single year, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I reread the entire Harry Potter series this summer, and so this is kind of like representing that on my favorites list. This has always been my favorite of the books, and probably always will be. I have some very strong feelings for the other books as well, and I'm a total Harry Potter nerd. You can't see any of my Harry Potter stuff behind me because it's actually in another room. I have a whole nother bookshelf that's just Harry Potter stuff. And yeah, so, but Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is my favorite, and I'm not even sure if I can pinpoint exactly why. One of the reasons is because, well, I better not say that because they'll spoil it for some people who haven't read the book. If you haven't read Harry Potter, what are you doing with your life? Just go read it now. Just stop watching YouTube videos and go read a book. All right. What Light is the next book on my list, and I actually got this from the town library, so I don't have it to show you, but it's by J. Asher, and it's just a cute little contemporary romance set on a Christmas tree farm, which was so cute and refreshing, and it's this beautiful winter scene, and super fun. This girl's family runs this Christmas tree farm, and she ends up having an encounter with a boy while they are down at their place that they stay during the holidays to sell the Christmas trees. The next book is Flame in the Mist by Renee Ahdieh, and this is Mulan-ish, but it's not really Mulan. It's actually in a different country, and but a similar idea in that we have a girl who is East Asian, and she has to pretend to be a boy. And that's where the similarities between this and Mulan kind of end. In this, our main character is supposed to go get married off, but she is attacked on the way to the Imperial City. And she finds out that this group of renegades has been hired to kill her, and so she disguises herself as a boy and infiltrates that group to try to discover who's trying to kill her and why. Defy the Stars is the next book. This is by Claudia Gray. I was sent this in uppercase box. I tried their subscription for a month just to see if I liked it, and I actually really loved it, but didn't keep going with the subscription just purely for money reasons. Defy the Stars is a science fiction story, and we have two main characters. One is a cyborg and one is a human, and they are at cross purposes. The human girl and the cyborg boy really should be trying to go at each other, but they end up working together to try to complete missions, and Earth is the bad guy. Earth is the bad guy planet, the one that they're trying to take down, and yeah, so Defy the Stars by Claudia Gray. Alright, next on the list, Daughter of the Pirate King by Tricia Levenseller. Just like the title suggests, this is about a girl who is a daughter of a pirate king, and she gets into all kinds of piratey fun adventures. I love this book so much. This is another one that I stayed up way too late reading, and I immediately messaged my cousin on Facebook, and I said, you have to read this book. I just stayed up ridiculously late reading it. Please go read it. And she said she would, and I don't know if she ever did because I always forget to ask her when I see her. We don't see each other very often. Anyway, Daughter of the Pirate King. Next on my list is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. That was a reread this year. I've read it just like Akamath. I have read this one 3 or 4 times. I just like this book. It's about a girl who writes fan fiction about these characters, Baz and Simon, and then if you go and read Rainbow Rowell's other book, Carry On, that's the canon story of what she writes fan fiction about. But Rainbow Rowell actually wrote Fangirl first before she wrote Carry On, which I think is kind of cool. That she was kind of inspired by her own work to write something else. And anyway, Fangirl, also, our main character, also struggles with a little bit of social anxiety. She wants to be at home, online, working on her fan fiction, but it's her first year at college, and she meets some friends, particularly one certain boy who tried to pull her out of that and get her to come out and experience life and do more outside of her little online world. Second to last book on my list is Caraval by Stephanie Garber, and a lot of people on BookTube know about Caraval. It's gorgeous just to look at, and it's a beautiful read. It's not what I thought it was going to be. It's about two sisters who really want to go to this magical circusy kind of place, and so I thought it was going to be more into what the actual circus-ish performance, carnival, circus was going to be, but it ends up being more of a mystery because one of the girls goes missing, and that's all I'm gonna say about that. The last book on my list is The Higher Girl by Laura Amy Schlitz, and this book is beautiful. If you're a fan of historical fiction or just a fan of female experiences, you would enjoy this book. This is about a girl who is an indentured servant, and she really has a hard life, and we get to really see how hard that was. And depending on what family you were indentured with, you could be almost like a slave. Some people definitely had an easier time than others, again, depending on their master or person that they were indentured to. But there were definite rules along with a lot of things like that, like no fraternizing with the family that you're indentured to, and, you know, those kind of things. So very, very, very good book. All of these books that I've told you about today are excellent, and I wish that I could tell you about more, because again, I read 180 books last year, and I have so many more to tell you about, and some of them are in my book review videos that I've made on this channel, and you can check them out anytime. I will be trying to do more book review videos in 2018, simply because I like to talk about books, and I want to do more of that. And yeah, there we go. So I hope you all have a wonderful 2018. Have a wonderful day. Happy reading. Adios.